This is a photo I took in Kentucky of the famous total eclipse. And this is what's called the ring of diamonds. Can you see the ring and the diamond? Okay. It's exactly as the sun is coming out from behind the moon. I wanted to show you this little clip. This is the newest plant-based documentary. It is documenting the fastest and the strongest people on planet Earth. So let me run the little clip. If you can, the sound, are you, okay, one second, my problem. Here it goes.
The one and only Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I ate a lot of meat. They showed us commercials.
Steak, that's what a man eats.
Selling that idea that real men eat meat.
Serious man food.
But you got to understand, that's marketing. That's not based on reality.
I've been teaching fighting techniques to government agencies for more than 15 years. Then, I got injured. Unable to teach for at least 6 months, I spent more than 1,000 hours studying science on recovery and nutrition, and stumbled across a study about the Roman gladiators.
The gladiators were predominantly vegetarian.
How could the original professional fighters be so powerful, eating only plants?
When I made the switch to a plant-based diet, I qualified for my 3rd Olympic team. I broke 2 American records. I was like, man, I should have done this a long while ago.
When I went plant-based, I wasn't sure if I was gonna survive. And I actually became like a machine.
One of the biggest misconceptions in sports nutrition is that we have to have animal protein to perform at a high level. That's just not true.
Sometimes you have to do things that you know your competitors aren't doing.
Today's blood and yesterday's blood.
Yeah. I think this is going to wake a lot of people up.
I was recovering better, not getting as sore. This was our best season in the last 15 years, and we had 14 guys on plant-based diets.
We all want to feel great, have more energy.
Cholesterol was 276. Today, 169.
Whoa, now you're talking.
Most guys my age can keep up with the grandchildren. My grandchildren can't keep up with me.
It's not one set of dietary guidelines for improving your performance as an athlete, another one for reversing heart disease, reversing diabetes. It's the same for all of them.
Someone asked me, how could you get as strong as an ox without eating any meat? And my answer was, have you ever seen an ox eating meat?
In about 2 or 3 weeks, it will be released on Netflix and all the other networks. So yeah, highly recommended documentary. Some of the doctors there actually know them personally. A few of the research papers we've been working on recently. This one about menstrual period that is too early in life, before the age of 11. Those ladies that had that first menstrual period too early, they are at increased risk of depression later on in life. That's because you're baiting those brains in all these female hormones before they're actually ready. And this is actually a social problem by the fact that you have a girl with the body of a lady, so yeah, that mix, not the best thing, increasing risk of many other social issues. Research has shown that eating too much animal products at the age of 2 to 3 years is what may be triggering those early menstrual periods. This other one, very interesting question. People that have high cholesterol, many of them happen to have bad sleep. And what causes what? Is the high cholesterol causing the bad sleep, or does the bad sleep causing bad cholesterol? Our conclusion is that it's probably both ways, okay? Both of them have that influence. And this is my students, my research paper when I was a student. When I was in medical school, I had to do a research project. So I have already worked in lifestyle centers. I knew the effect of lifestyle on health. So I went and talked to my advisor, and I told him I want to lower cholesterol by switching to a plant-based diet. You know what he told me? Ramirez, don't waste your time. Cholesterol cannot go down unless you take medication. I told him, look, it's my money. I want to do it. So I went ahead and did it. You know what happened? Every single participant that switched their diet, their cholesterol went down. In fact, we had one of them, their cholesterol came down 117 points in a matter of 2 weeks, okay? Just with the healthy lifestyle. And recently, my wife and my family, we were in Australia, and we recorded a new series, a vegetarian Mexican cooking class, okay? If you're interested in getting a hold of that, contact 3ABN Australia, not the 3ABN here in America, but 3ABN Australia. Just Google that. It'll give you an email. Just send them an email and ask them how you can get a hold of that series. Okay, this is the real thing, not fake Taco Bell wannabe Mexican food. Okay, this is the real thing. Again, you can find all that research on this page here. Just Google Francisco Ramirez ResearchGate, and you should be able to get a hold of that research. There's more than 100 studies there. And also, there is an Instagram and a YouTube, and also a very active Twitter account. If you don't even have Twitter, don't worry. Just type that address in your browser, and you will see what is that. Let me share with you a couple of things that I just posted on my Twitter account. This one, fascinating. I just put this one a couple of hours ago. This study just came out. How males that are drinking alcohol 3 months before they make their wife pregnant, they have a 44% increase of risk of that child having heart defects. And if they abuse alcohol, the last 6 months, they have 52% increased risk of having their child a heart issue. And now we know why. And the answer starts with an E. What is the word? Epigenetics. As you drink the alcohol, you actually cause the disease genes in your sperm to turn on. And as you pass them on, they bring disease to the child. One of the many reasons why you should avoid drinking alcohol. This other one, very interesting article about music therapy. How music therapy stimulates your brain, improving neuroplasticity and making new connections. Tomorrow at 11, don't miss it. We'll be talking more about neuroplasticity. And this other one, how living next to the ocean is actually better for your mental health. Lucky you guys are here in Seattle and Tacoma, okay? It has this relaxing, effect, good for your mental health, living close by the ocean. Again, you can find all that on my Twitter account and read more about it. So let us talk about the subject of this evening, and that is the subject of inflammation. If you ask me, Doctor, from all the things that I can be doing to help me have a good health, what should I learn? You know what I'm going to tell you? You need to learn the concept of inflammation. Because most of the diseases have as a common denominator inflammation before they became grave. So we find something that is called a geographical pattern of disease. In other words, for example, regarding cancer, there are areas that have a lot of cancer. There are areas that have less cancer. Let me ask you this. How is America here in this graphic? Sadly, they are the leaders worldwide. Okay? And the sad thing about it, people that come from other areas that have less cancer rates, as they move to America, those cancer rates increase. And you find that geographical pattern of disease regarding diabetes, obesity, and notice the big difference in cancer rate. Check, for example, prostate cancer, America versus Bangladesh. Small difference or big difference? Huge difference. Because of their habits, those habits increase or decrease the cancer risk. Now, notice this one. Japanese people that moved to America regarding breast cancer. You can see here, the higher this, the more the cancer. So you can see here, this is the first generation that moved to America. This is the daughters of this one. This is the daughters of this one, the daughter of this one. Where is this going? It's getting what? Worse. As they start acquiring the habits of the Americans and start living their behaviors and diet of those ancestors, then disease starts increasing. Notice this study. This one is comparing three populations. You have Japanese people in Japan, Japanese people that moved to Hawaii, and Caucasians that live in Hawaii on the yellow. Notice how the green and the yellow look a lot like. Can you see that? In all the different cancers, except in two. In the very bottom, you find stomachal and esophageal cancer much higher in Japan due to a couple of factors. One of them, their high alcohol intake. They drink a lot there. I was there speaking last year. I spoke in many places in all over Japan. And second factor, their high intake of animal smoke products. And we're going to learn today how those products are tremendously carcinogenic. So let me explain to you this concept of inflammation. I want you to remember the last time you poked yourself with a needle. Anybody here has done that? I think every single one of us has done that, isn't it? Now, when you poke yourself with the needle, how did it feel? It was such a pleasurable sensation, isn't it? What do you feel? Pain, first symptom of inflammation. The reason why you have that pain, God made us that way so that you can pull out from whatever is injuring you. Not only that, there were other things that happened. What about the color of your skin? Any change between the one you poke and the other one you didn't? Redness, second symptom of inflammation. What about if you check the temperature? Any change in the temperature? It gets warmer. And lastly, any change in the size of that finger that you poke and the other one you didn't? It got swollen. So those are the four classic symptoms of inflammation that tells the body that something is not right. Anytime you injure your tissues, you will get that reaction. If you're playing basketball and you twist your ankle, is it going to hurt? Does it get red? Does it get swollen? You get the same inflammation symptom. Anytime you burn, isn't it? It's going to get red, it's going to get painful, and so forth. And the reason why the body is reacting that way is because it's ringing the alarm and telling the rest of the body something is not right here. I need help. And that mobilizes your immune system and the cells that bring healing and so forth. Now, this is what medically speaking is called acute inflammation, okay? This is short term. How long did it take after you poked yourself with a needle for everything to come back to normal? Did it take a couple of years? No, isn't it? A few days, a few weeks, if it was like a little more severe. And then things come back to normality, body shuts down inflammation, and everything continues to work normally. But since the first century, the Roman physicians described those symptoms of inflammation as calor, rubor, tumor, dolor. Some scientists add a fifth one, and that is functio lasse, in which functionality of that injured part is impaired. So, many things can cause inflammation, from bacteria to virus to fungus to things related to your immunity, to physical things such as too much heat, too much cold, radiation, to chemical agents, or even something just hitting you, like a rock and so forth, can create inflammation in your body. So as I mentioned to you, anytime you injure your tissues, you will create inflammation in your body. But you know, a very wise physician back in the 1800s realized something. He realized that most of the diseases that he was seeing in the clinical practice had as a root of all of them, and this is the word, they had chronic inflammation as a result of those, that was the origin of those problems. So chronic inflammation is that inflammation that it's long-term and the body has problems stopping that inflammation. That's why it's so dangerous. Now, inflammation can be triggered by many different things. And then, I don't know if you notice how we doctors like to use the word itis. Oh, you have laryngitis, and you have colitis, and so forth. Itis means inflammation, okay? And if you keep up with that inflammation long term, things can become nasty and change to things such as cancer. That's why it's such an important thing. Now, this is the biggest problem with chronic inflammation. So, inflammation, as we will be learning tonight, is triggered by the way you live. That's going to give, as a result, chronic problems. And what's the last line? What does it say there? Is it what? Now, if it's silent, do you know it's there? And that is exactly the problem with chronic inflammation. See, there's many health problems that the person, it's hurting or it's bothering them so much and they go and seek medical help because of that. But the problem with chronic inflammation is that in most instances, it doesn't give you any symptom. And the person thinks that everything is fine, they shouldn't do any changes because everything is running perfectly fine, and they don't realize the tremendous harm that this chronic inflammation is causing in their bodies. In fact, in this journal, they make an analogy between fire and chronic inflammation. Now, is it a good idea to play with fire? No, isn't it? Because you can get burned. Many people are playing with fire regarding chronic inflammation, and they don't realize the disaster that that can bring on them. And that's why Time magazine calls it the what type of killer? The sacred killer. And I see this often in the clinical practice. Patient comes, I do a complete medical history, and we take analysis. And as I'm seeing those numbers, I realize things are not well with that person. And I tell him, look, we need to make some changes because things don't look good. And some people, what do they tell me? Changes? Why should I change? Everything is fine. I feel good. But what they don't realize, the secret killer is literally destroying them before their eyes, but because there's not too many symptoms, they think everything is fine. In fact, inside the magazine, it says the what? The fires inside of you. I like to explain this with the following analogy. Is as a nice fireplace. I mean, where I live up in the mountains there, close to Tahoe, it gets cold in the winter there. So you need to have some sort of heat source. And having something like this, it makes the house quite cozy and livable and so forth. Now, think of this as acute inflammation, short-term inflammation. The fire stays inside of there, and things work fine as long as the fire stays inside of there. Now, what would happen if I were to get wood and start putting it in that fireplace, and more wood, and more wood, and more wood, and more wood, until the thing is piling out outside? By the laws of physics, sooner or later, that fire is going to start coming out of where it was designed, and disaster can be the result of that. Yes or no? That is exactly what chronic inflammation does. Other than a feeling of tiredness and a little bit of cloudiness in your head and so forth, no more symptoms than that. And you think things are fine while the fires are coming out of there, and unless we stop them, those fires are going to cause disaster in your life. So where are those fires coming from? What may be triggering chronic inflammation? Here is a nice list of those things. You have tobacco smoke, tremendously inflammatory. I have seen many people ending up with serious problems just by the fact that they were smoking. Also, alcohol. Any form of alcohol causes increased risk of cancer. One of the many reasons why you should not be using it. Also, too much sunlight. How do you know you got too much sunlight? Did it get red? Did it hurt? You got swollen. Watch out. Sunlight is a blessing, but too much sunlight has a negative effect. If your work has to do with having to work outside and exposing yourself, you need to protect yourself so you don't create chronic inflammation. Also, animal products. Any type of animal product, when you consume it, you will trigger inflammation. I'll show you a study in a minute. And having too much body weight, excess body weight by itself triggers chronic inflammation in your body. We'll talk about that in a minute also. So the reason why, for example, animal products cause inflammation has to do with the following. Animal products and refined products, white flour, sugar, they are very high in something that is called arachidonic acid. That arachidonic acid is part of every single one of your cells. In fact, the day that you twist your ankle and you started the process of inflammation, that was possible due to the fact that you had arachidonic acid stored in your cells. And that triggered that chain of events so that when you poke yourself with a needle, when you burn and so forth, you can start the healing process by starting acute inflammation. But the problem with animal products and refined products is that anytime you eat them, they are too high in arachidonic acid. And the fact that you're consuming so much arachidonic acid, that will trigger inflammation in your body before or without necessarily injuring your tissues. You just turn on the mechanism by consuming them. Now, you can prove this in the laboratory. For example, you can get alcohol, you choose beer, wine, vodka, your choice of beverage. You put a paintbrush on that alcohol, you paint that on the skin of a mouse many times in a day, and in a matter of a few weeks, you will start to see how a cancer starts to grow there. Why does that happen? And the answer starts with an I. Inflammation. The inflammatory nature of the substances created chronic inflammation, and we continue to put that chronic inflammatory agent, those cells will change and it will become a cancer. Now, notice this one. Marijuana also has a negative effect. Look at this. After 20 years, huge study published in the scientific literature, it shows how marijuana increases all kinds of negative effects on your body. By the way, you can find this one on my Twitter if you're interested about reading it. And also this one. How marijuana increases dramatically your risk of Alzheimer's disease due to the fact of messing around with the blood flow to the brain. And be careful with that CBD oil, is not the best thing for you. Big, thorough research show how that CBD oil affects your immunity, has a negative effect on your liver, and it also, even though many of those CBD oils claim that it's THC free, many of them do have the THC. Now, you can see here how different factors affect chronic inflammation and cancer risk. Which one is first there? The first one is tobacco. But which one has even a bigger effect? The things that you are eating either are stopping the inflammation or increasing it. And you can see here the different factors that affect inflammation. So as we've been talking about, you have the way you cook things, but also stress. Too much stress in your life increases the risk of chronic inflammation, pollution, viruses, and bacteria. Now, check out this study in which people that had issues with their weight were in what state? What state? Pro-inflammatory. That's the bad news. Let me give you the good news. If you have excess body weight, the good news is that as soon as you start losing a few pounds, the inflammation in your body will decrease. So don't despair. Rather, use that as a motivation to make better choices and start that process of getting yourself in the right weight. And the problem happens to be what is called the abdominal fat. The fat inside your belly, that's the type of fat that is tremendously inflammatory and should be the goal of decreasing it when you lose weight. And this one also, how people with high emotional stress are at higher risk of heart disease. And why is that? And the answer starts with an I. Inflammation. And that's right, because it will trigger chronic inflammation, and that will increase the risk of heart disease. And it's been documented in the scientific literature how excess body weight is linked with all kinds of cancer. And now you know why. Because of that chronic inflammatory state that it gives. So this is a nice summary of the things that can potentially trigger inflammation. So you have radiation, alcohol, pollutants, the way you cook, bacteria, viruses, smoke, and stress. All of them can potentially increase chronic inflammation. And increased inflammation actually has an effect even on your mental health. And notice this study. Journal Nutrients, very respected journal. The association between animal product consumption and cancer was as strong as that linking tobacco and cancer. That is how dangerous it is to consume animal products, because when you consume them, it triggers chronic inflammation, and that's why it increases the risk of all kinds of health problems. And notice this published paper in which they had two groups. Both groups were fasting overnight. One group continued fasting just so that we can compare it to against something else. And the other group ate the following breakfast, which consisted of white flour, white bread, egg, cheese, sausage, and fried potatoes, hash browns. As you can see, these are inflammatory foods. So what they did, they measure in their body the effect. And you can see here, as soon as the person ate that breakfast, inflammation exploded in their body within minutes. And it lasted more than a day. Now, if you were to eat these foods once a year, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. You turn on the inflammation, and then after a day or so, inflammation is going to go down. But inflammatory breakfast, inflammatory lunch, inflammatory supper, what are you doing? Wood and wood and wood and wood to the fireplace. By logic, the fires are going to come out from where they are supposed to. And what's going to be the result? Disaster is going to be the result. So that's why our choices have consequences, even if we don't like them, isn't it? But that's the way that this works. Notice this one. This is fascinating. If you have inflammation in your body, your ability to take decisions is impaired. Your ability to say no and delay gratification gets impaired. So not only chronic inflammation has an effect on your body, but it actually has an effect on the functioning of your brain. And notice this one, cigarette smoking and inflammation. Only one cigarette will turn on inflammation for more than a day in your body. Now, how many cigarettes the smoker smokes? Only one? What are we doing there? You know, the wood and the wood and the wood and the wood. Now, you may be saying, well, doctor, I don't smoke. Congratulations, and I'm very happy you don't smoke, but beware of this. What about this? Eating 2 pounds of meat that you put on the grill is equivalent to smoking 600 cigarettes. Tremendously carcinogenic. And this is Journal Science, one of the top journals in the world. Now, doctor, does that happen the same if it's chicken? It doesn't matter. It's animal product. It will have the same effect. And the reason why this happened is because meat and chicken are a very deficient food. They don't have antioxidants on it. So there's nothing that stops that damage as the molecules are changing due to the high heat. If you put a piece of potato there, a carrot, a piece of broccoli, that doesn't happen to it because these foods have antioxidants and they are able to buffer the damage. So, in closing, what we are learning tonight is that inflammation, chronic inflammation, it's not caused by bad luck, but rather by the choices we are taking. And you know, those effects of chronic inflammation will be reflected in what is called chronic diseases. You know the joint problems that many people have? Those joint problems are not the result of age, rather they're the result of chronic inflammation. The joint starts to get deformed, and anytime you move it, it's painful. The back gets painful, the hip gets painful, and so forth, secondary to the destruction of the cartilage, secondary to chronic inflammation. So, what we are talking about, this chronic inflammation, as I mentioned, is the root cause of most of the diseases that we see in our midst. So by stopping that chronic inflammation, we're able to decrease the risk of many health problems. So here comes the question. Is inflammation your friend or your enemy? What's the answer? It depends. See, the day you poke yourself with a needle, the day you twist your ankle, if there was no inflammation, it wouldn't heal. But because you have short-term inflammation, the healing process starts to take place. But chronic inflammation, that is your worst enemy, and you should stop it ASAP before you get burned. So, you may be saying, Doctor, if inflammation is fire, where's the fire extinguisher, isn't it? I want to have the fire extinguisher to stop this inflammation inside my body. Well, as Hippocrates says, let food be thy medicine, and what? And medicine be thy food. It has been published so many times how plant-based diets will reduce inflammation in your body. But the problem is that we are not eating them. You know, this is a picture of typical 1-week diet of a household here in America. If you notice, it's all this junk stuff, isn't it? Tremendously chronic inflammation type of things. Where are the veggies? Where are the fruits there? Which are the ones that are loaded with those antioxidants and those anti-inflammatory agents that will shut down the inflammation. So what you need to do, you need to run to the farmer's market. Okay? And you need to eat all the fruits from all different colors, all the vegetables from all different colors. And you know, I was spending a couple of weeks in a home of somebody in Southern California, and that person was eating half a banana per day. And they thought that they were eating all the fruits in the world. Please don't deceive yourself, you know. You need to eat 3, ideally 5 servings, okay, of fruits and vegetables at least a day. That's where you're going to get all those anti-inflammatory agents. People eat anything except that, you know. That should be your first priority. So all the fruits, all the veggies, cereals, whole cereals, don't process them, don't eat them as white flour, as white bread, because those things trigger inflammation. But if they are in their wholesome form, they stop inflammation. And remember to eat your legumes, you know, your lentils and your chickpeas and your beans. You need to have 3 servings of them a day in order to have that good source of anti-inflammatory agents. And the last thing you need to have, and here's the principle, spices that are not spicy. Okay? If it is spicy, it's going to cause irritation, and if it causes irritation, it causes what? Inflammation. Therefore, watch out. Things like black pepper and white pepper, don't even have them in your home. Those things are too irritating and will not give you good results. So, there's some people that say, well, doctor, I didn't see meat there. If I don't eat meat, where am I going to get my protein? There is plenty of protein in the plant world. You just saw the video. The guy that was flipping the car, remember? The guy with the beer? He is the strongest man on planet Earth. He is in a total vegetarian diet. Guy is a German. You can find them on the internet. This is what is called the essential amino acids. You need to eat this in order to have complete protein. This is how much you need per day. This is how much you will eat if you eat broccoli, asparagus, white beans, raw oats, corn, sweet potatoes, rice, tomatoes, pumpkin, whole wheat. Is there enough protein there? There is plenty of protein. In fact, research shows that the more protein you eat, the higher your risk of lymphatic cancer. And now you know why. Because it triggers what? Inflammation. And that inflammation will end up changing the cells, increasing your risk of cancer. So here is the battle. You have things that increase cancer risk and disease, and you have all these substances that fight against cancer and inflammation, but are only found on plant foods. And the question for you is going to be, who is going to win this balance? Are you going to put more inflammatory substances in your body, or are you going to overcome that by eating that whole foods, plant-based diet? And it's interesting that in the very first chapter of the Bible, God gave us the guideline. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be what? Your anti-inflammatory agents. So may you apply these principles. May you be able to harvest those blessings and experience that anti-inflammatory